I never imagined that such an ordinary day with streets full of hurried steps and distracted gazes could mark my life so deeply. It seemed like just another morning like so many others, horns mixed with scattered conversations, the constant flow of people who always seemed to be racing against the clock, and me, lost in my own thoughts. The wind blew softly as if trying to ease the weight of everyone's rush. And it was in this scene that I saw him for the first time, John. He walked slowly as if carrying not only the years of his life on his shoulders, but also pain, burdens, and memories too heavy to erase. His body leaned forward, his shoulders curved, his steps dragging, and his eyes fixed on some distant place. There was no urgency in his movements, but there was also no rest. Time itself seemed to have become a heavy chain for him, one far too hard to bear. At first glance, he might have been just another anonymous face in the crowd. But something about him caught me. There was a subtle contrast. While his expression revealed exhaustion, defeat, and abandonment, his eyes told another story. In them, I saw a timid light, almost extinguished but stubbornly alive. It was like the fragile flame of a candle in the wind, trembling at every gust, almost disappearing yet refusing to go out. It was in that detail, in that stubborn glimmer, that I realized John carried within him a story greater than appearances revealed. And without realizing it, I became a witness to his transformation, and in a way, part of it as well. At that time, John had nothing the world would call prosperity. His pockets were empty, and often so was his stomach. The room where he slept was extremely simple: cold walls, worn furniture, and the silence of someone who no longer expected visits or news. Debts piled up around his bed like threatening shadows, daily reminders of promises he could not keep. Every bill that arrived felt like a stone thrown against his dignity. Every suspicious glance from those around him felt like an invisible sentence repeating, "He won't make it." But strangely, what hurt the most was not the unpaid bills, nor the days of hunger or cold. What hurt most was the suffocating sensation of having no worth at all. It was the quiet abandonment of his own hope, the loss of faith in himself. And we all know, when we lose faith in ourselves, even breathing begins to feel like useless effort. And yet, I saw it. Deep in his silent soul, there was still a hidden strength. It was like the root of a tree lost in the desert, surviving drop by drop, but firm, clinging stubbornly to the dry ground, refusing to die. John stumbled countless times. He fell, got hurt, lost heart. But somehow he always stood up again, sometimes trembling, sometimes on his knees, but still standing. That repeated, almost stubborn movement was what struck me most. He had not completely given up. I remember one night in particular. The sky was starless, the streets empty, the silence heavy. John wandered aimlessly until he stopped in front of a lit shop window. Inside, people laughed, toasted, celebrated achievements that seemed unreachable to him. I studied his face in that moment. I imagined it was the time he would finally give in, the instant when despair would consume him. But to my surprise, John did not cry. He didn't pound on the glass, didn't curse life, didn't rage against his misfortune. He simply took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and whispered to himself, "Will I ever smile like that too?" That was the moment I realized prosperity was already being born within him. Because prosperity is not when you already have the party, the full table, or the lifted glass. Prosperity is when, even with nothing, you are still able to wish, to dream, and to believe. But life rarely offers easy respite. John faced harsh trials. He lost friends who no longer believed in him, lost opportunities that seemed like his last chance. There were days when despair hit so hard that he seriously thought of giving up entirely. I saw him cry alone, sitting on the cold floor of his room, too weak to stand. I saw him listen to the whisper of solitude telling him it would be better to end everything. And still I was there when, after long minutes of suffocating silence, John lifted his head, wiped his tears, and whispered, "I'm still here." That was when I understood. This was the secret. True prosperity is not built on constant victories, but on the daily decision to stand firm even when everything around you insists that it's pointless. Over time, John began to see life differently. He learned to value the small gestures that once went unnoticed: the bread shared with a neighbor, the hot coffee offered by the lady on the corner, the innocent smile of a child greeting him in the street. In each simple detail, he saw signs that prosperity was not a distant goal, but a daily construction, laid brick by brick, gesture by gesture. It was as if every small act became a stone in the foundation of something greater. John discovered that to prosper is not to accumulate treasures that rust with time, but to cultivate a heart capable of blooming even in dry soil. He began to wake with a different outlook, not because life had changed completely, but because something essential inside him was no longer the same. And the most beautiful part was seeing how this transformation didn't stay only within him. Gradually, those around him began to notice. At first, they were puzzled. How could someone who apparently had nothing smile like that? Later, they drew closer. Without realizing it, they were touched by that flame which once seemed so fragile, but now shone steady. John had no money to give, but he offered something even more precious: hope. He didn't deliver magical solutions, but he gave his presence. And little by little, he discovered that prosperity is exactly that: when your life becomes a lighthouse, shining a path for those who walk in the dark. I saw discouraged people rise again after a simple conversation with him. I saw hardened hearts soften just by hearing his story. I saw impossible situations take shape simply because someone dared to believe. And John's persistent, contagious faith became seed scattered in many other lives. And then, one day, I realized John had changed completely. Not because he was rich, not because he had gained status or recognition, but because when you looked at him, you no longer saw the defeated man he once was. You saw someone prosperous. Prosperous because he did not let pain define him. Prosperous because he managed to bloom where once there was only desert. Prosperous because he discovered that true wealth is not measured by what you possess, but by what you carry in your heart. And I, who had only observed his walk until then, ended up being transformed as well. Alongside him, I discovered that prosperity is not a final destination, but a path. It is a daily choice. It is the courage to believe that even when you are lying on the ground, there is still a chance to rise. It is the boldness to keep the flame burning that insists on shining, even when the wind blows hard, trying to put it out. And if this story touched your heart, if it inspired you, leave your like and share this video. That way, I'll know John's journey also spoke to you, because the truth is, his story does not belong only to him. It is also mine. It is yours. It belongs to all of us who, at some point in life, thought of giving up, but kept going. Because prosperity begins precisely at that moment, when we decide not to extinguish hope. If John's story touched your heart, let it shine further. Leave a like to show your support and share this video with someone who might need a spark of hope today. Together, we can spread the true meaning of prosperity.